Hi, this is the Beyond Law podcast, and I'm your host Shubhra Sengupta. Beyond Law covers the stories of lawyers who have transitioned outside the law and are creating impact in spaces outside the law. We also cover educational opportunities and courses that help lawyers make this transition and how internet and technology is changing the face of the legal profession itself.
We have Pranav Mehta with us. Pranav is from the Analyst 19 batch, and he presently works with Spark Capital as an investment banker. So what we are here today to discuss is how does a lawyer get into investment banking? How does investment banking as a career work? And how does one break into it? And to demystify, like, what does an investment banker do and what does a life of an investment banker look like? So I think Pranav will take us through all of that. So Pranav, you want to start with like a short background about yourself?
Sure, Shubhro. Thanks a lot. Thanks to everybody for joining in. I graduated from National Law School, Bangalore in 2019. And in my time at law school, I did a varied amount of activities, be it from committees to mooting, debating, that kind of stuff. And I did a lot of corporate law internship with Cyril Amarchand Mangaldas and even another law firm known as Platinum Partners. And at the time of graduation, I did have job offers from Cyril Amarchand and AZB, but I ended up joining an investment bank. So that's broadly about my background. I've been in Spark for a year now, and I work with their corporate finance team.
I think just to start with, given that everyone might not have a background on what exactly does an investment banker do or what exactly does investment banking as a profession look like, do you want to sort of get into that and give us a background?
Sure. So investment banking is a very vast profession as such. Most investment banks do a varied amount of things. For example, to begin with, there's something known as corporate finance, where people raise capital or they do mergers and acquisitions. That's the traditional understanding of what investment banking is. But there are so many other things. For example, there's wealth management, there's dealing with debt instruments, and then there's doing fixed income, so on and so forth. So investment banking overall, I think the traditional understanding that I am going to go deeper into is the corporate finance aspect of it, where you work on raising capital for existing companies or maybe help them undergo acquisitions or get acquired by different players. So that's the understanding of it. If I'm going to speak about what I would usually do in a day, so it can involve anything from making teasers or one-page sliders on opportunities that your bank should go after or opportunities that you can show to potential buyers at different points in time. Or you can just go around be pitching to companies thinking why they should raise capital now and what is the amount of capital that they should raise and why you should be the banker helping them do that. So I think most bankers early in their careers focus a lot on doing these kind of things. And what I'm essentially pointing out to you is what bankers do when they interact with clients, right? They're trying to tell them that your companies are valued in a particular way. They're trying to tell interested buyers that this is the value of this particular company, so on and so forth. And obviously, in addition to all of this, I think that my day can also be divided by things like if I'm staffed on a deal, then obviously there's a lot more traveling involved. There's a lot more front facing interaction with clients and trying to understand either their businesses or working closely with them in trying to make the documents. Or if you are at a different stage in the transaction where you have to interact a lot with the buyers, or if you're not involved on a deal at the moment, I think then most of the stuff that I pointed out earlier, which is just maintaining or coming up with new opportunities that should be procured, is what most of the focus for my day is. But that's broadly what an investment banker does and what a day in my life looks like.
Understood. To basically sum it up, investment banking is a profession about helping companies raise capital largely. There are obviously IBs who deal with M&As, there are IBs who deal with, internal restructuring and so on. I would like to start at maybe, the 0 point where you were in college and how did you sort of come up with the idea of going into investment banking?
Right. Thanks, Shubho. I think that was a fair explanation of what investment bankers do. As far as my experience is concerned and how I made the switch, in my fourth year, or rather in my third year, I was actually interning with all of these corporate law firms. And unfortunately, the only practice I could work with were the capital markets or the M&A team. So as a part of doing that, I think we got to know that there are bankers on the other side. That's where, most of the money comes from, or or rather on those deals, I think bankers run the deal and lawyers merely work as service providers on those deals. So I think I actually wanted to figure out and explore that aspect of deal making. So in pursuit of that, I think I was just trying to look out if I can make that switch early. Fortunately for me, Deutsche Bank offered an internship for a few law students who could actually work with their trading desk. Now, I understand it's not essentially what we described as what investment bankers traditionally do, but I think that was the closest I could get to working with any investment bank. So I actually interviewed and I got through. In Deutsche Bank, which was only a 2 month long internship in my fourth year, I think wide varieties of stuff is what I got to work on. We were actually supporting the Hong Kong desk. And in doing so, I think most of my work back then used to be just legal, just looking at documents. Although financial models and things like those never made any sense to me. But I think working there in those 2 months and realizing that there's a life beyond law for lawyers, in terms of seeing that some of your peers could be IM graduates or IIT graduates, and there's a whole lot of perspective that we miss out on when we work closely with only lawyers. So I think that really intrigued me, and I thought, why not just like try exploring this field further? And one thing that everybody around me seemed to be doing, especially at the younger levels or at analyst levels, was to write CFA exams. So I just went ahead with the entire thing. I wrote my CFA level 1 exam while I was early in my fifth year, and I managed to clear it. And I think there's some restriction which explains why you can only write CFA level 1 exam while you're still studying. So after I cleared CFA level 1 exam, I think I started to gain a little more traction than what I would originally have. So I think I just went around talking to people. And I think the sad reality, for some of you, it might be an advantage, for some of you, it might be a little difficult, is to network. And I think investment banking, given that the openings are very limited and most banks don't display their openings anywhere, so it only comes from word of mouth. And you actually have to be connected with a lot of people, speak with them regularly, and see that they keep in touch with you and let you know whenever there's an open. And that's exactly what I was doing. I was just foraging in the dark, for all I can say. And I didn't bring any formal education from law. I was able to convince them that, see, I wrote my CFA level 1 exam and I passed it. And I think that's the kind of basic knowledge that they expect analysts to have any which ways. So I was able to convince them that this is something that I'm really interested in doing. I have done an internship in this regard. I've written CFA level 1, and that's honestly the best anybody can do as a student in college, right? So I think somewhere along the line, they did want to test my technicals even initially at that level. And I believe things went fine, and that's why I started working there. But that's sort of my journey from how I entered investment banking.
So I would want to focus on two things, right? And this is something we were talking about before. One is Deutsche Bank, and there would only be so many campuses and even lesser number of law campuses that a Deutsche Bank would come to. Any advice on what people can go back and tell their recruitment committees, or how do people sort of approach a Deutsche Bank? Something that will allow them to like get a taste of investment banking earlier in life.
Right. So, bro, a couple of things I think people can do. I think we are all, if we are all trying to get into investment banking, we are all coming into a field where people don't necessarily recognize the lines between an NLS or any other college for that matter. I think for them, all law students are pretty much the same. What really does make the difference is that you show that whatever little you did, your focus is always to make that shift, right? For me, that was working in all of these law firms and making sure that the team that I ended up working with was focused on capital markets, or those teams are actually focused on mergers and acquisitions. And I think that not only applies to people who are still in college, that also applies to people who have started working, right? Perhaps you could try making a shift to a team that does more work that is more aligned with bankers, right? That has to be the M&A practice or the whatever practice you have in a law firm, I think. And the second thing is, I think you should not focus a lot on starting big right out of college, right? The reality of this market is that there's so many graduates from IITs and IIMs and good BU colleges that aim to get into the same position. And all of these people are extremely talented, and all of these people are equally deserving. So my advice to you is, if a Deutsche does not come and recruit on your campus, try with a tier 2 or a tier 3 bank convince them why they should at least give you an internship, prove to them that you have the necessary skills by virtue of doing the CFA level 1 or just generally having knowledge about corporate finance and stuff, and intern with them. I think even small things like having an internship with something which is a smaller brand, but you did a lot of relevant work, goes a long way in proving your intent and why they should hire you. So I think those are some of the things you can do.
If you enjoyed that podcast, please like, share, and subscribe and help spread the word. Thank you and look forward to seeing you next week.